The world of professional sports has always been defined not just by the moments of triumph that occur under the bright stadium lights, but by the silent, often invisible battles that athletes wage when the cameras are turned off and the crowds have gone home. For decades, global audiences have watched in awe as legendary figures push the absolute boundaries of human capability, enduring physical agony and psychological pressure that would easily break an ordinary person. We celebrate their victories, cement their names in history books, and turn them into cultural icons, yet we rarely stop to consider the immense compounding toll that such a life demands. When a sporting icon achieves everything there is to achieve, the expectations do not simply vanish. Instead, they morph into an unforgiving, permanent weight that follows them into every aspect of their personal life. Every movement is scrutinized, every setback is magnified, and the transition from the peak of athletic perfection to the harsh realities of aging and physical vulnerability becomes a public spectacle. It is a narrative as old as time, where the very attributes that make someone a champion, an unyielding drive, a refusal to accept defeat, and an ability to push through excruciating pain, can ultimately become the very things that complicate their journey outside the sporting arena. Before we dive deeper into the extraordinary chapters of this unfolding story and examine the quiet turning points that define true resilience, take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel so you never miss our in-depth investigative reports and exclusive updates on the stories shaping the world today. To truly understand the gravity of a modern crisis involving a sports legend, one must first look back at the environment that creates such a monumental figure, where the line between public triumph and private suffering is perpetually blurred. Imagine spending an entire lifetime conditioning your mind and body to operate at a level of perfection that only a handful of individuals in human history have ever reached. For such a person, physical pain is not merely a warning signal from the body. It becomes a constant grinding companion that must be managed, outmaneuvered, and overcome on a daily basis. The relentless pursuit of greatness requires countless hours of grueling practice, repetitive motions that wear down joints, and a mental fortitude that blocks out any vulnerability. Over the years, the accolades stack up, the trophies fill the showcases, and the world begins to view the athlete as something superhuman, an indestructible force impervious to the frailties that affect regular people. Yet, beneath the polished exterior and the historic achievements, the physical reality remains unchanged, as years of microtraumas, severe injuries, and invasive surgical procedures inevitably begin to accumulate, demanding a terrifyingly high price for glory. When the physical foundation of an athletic empire begins to fracture, the struggle shifts from the field of play to the sterile confines of medical clinics and rehabilitation centers, far removed from the adulation of millions. The public, accustomed to seeing only the finished product of victory, is often left completely blindsided when the reality of an athlete's private torment suddenly spills over into the public eye through unexpected and jarring incidents. It begins with whispers of mounting physical setbacks, followed by periods of prolonged absence that leave fans and commentators speculating about what is truly happening behind closed doors. The transition from being a dominant force in sports to dealing with the grueling reality of chronic pain management is a path fraught with immense psychological peril. When standard medical interventions yield only temporary relief, the reliance on advanced therapeutics, specialized recovery programs, and specialized pharmaceuticals becomes a necessity just to maintain a baseline of normal daily functioning. This delicate balance is incredibly difficult to sustain, particularly when the entire world is watching and waiting for a triumphant return that may or may not ever materialize. The intersection of a legendary career, chronic physical suffering, and the unyielding spotlight of the media creates a volatile environment where a single legal or personal incident can instantly trigger a massive global media storm. For an individual who has spent decades being celebrated as a paragon of excellence, finding oneself suddenly facing the cold, unyielding reality of the legal system is a profoundly destabilizing experience. The immediate aftermath of such an event triggers a predictable cycle of intense public speculation, sensationalized headlines, and an overwhelming sense of shock from a global audience that struggles to reconcile the image of a hero with the reality of a flawed human being. Yet, it is precisely within these moments of profound vulnerability that the true complexity of a person's character begins to emerge, revealing a deeply human struggle that resonates far beyond the confines of sports. The narrative shifts from one of athletic statistics and historical records to a much more intimate, stressful exploration of endurance, personal accountability, and the desperate search for a sustainable path forward amidst a chaotic sea of public judgment and internal pressure. As the dust begins to settle from the initial shock of a highly publicized incident, the focus inevitably shifts toward the long, quiet, and deeply arduous process of personal reclamation and rehabilitation. This process is rarely a straightforward linear journey, rather, it is a complex series of steps forward and backward, taken entirely out of the public eye in specialized facilities designed to provide both medical expertise and a shield from the prying eyes of the world. For a global icon, checking into a high-end recovery institution is not merely a medical necessity, but a high-stakes endeavor to rebuild a life that has been severely disrupted by physical pain and the legal complications that followed. The pressure to heal, to find balance, and to successfully navigate the intense stress of upcoming legal battles creates a pressure cooker environment where every decision carries immense weight. The world waits in a state of suspended anticipation, eager for any scrap of information regarding the athlete's progress, while those closest to the situation understand that the true work of recovery is a slow, agonizing process that requires confronting both physical limitations and the heavy psychological burden of a legendary legacy. The delicate balance between a sports icon's public persona and their private struggle completely shattered on the quiet roads of Jupiter Island, Florida, during the early morning hours of March 27th. It was a date that would instantly etch itself into the annals of modern sports tragedy, not because of a failure on the golf course, but because of a devastating rollover vehicle accident that left the global community in a state of absolute shock. When emergency responders arrived at the scene of the crash, they discovered a scene of profound destruction, with a luxury vehicle severely damaged and a legendary five-time Masters tournament champion inside. Tiger Woods, a man whose name had for decades been synonymous with absolute precision, physical dominance, and unmatched mental composure, was suddenly facing the harrowing reality of a major traffic accident and immediate legal jeopardy. Law enforcement officials at the scene quickly noted that the celebrated athlete exhibited distinct and unmistakable signs of impairment, a revelation that sent immediate shockwaves through the media landscape. Despite blowing a completely negative breathalyzer test, which ruled out the presence of alcohol in his system, the situation grew rapidly more complex and legally precarious when Woods made the critical decision to decline a urinalysis test, a choice that immediately triggered a formal charge of refusal to submit to a lawful chemical test. The unfolding drama deepened significantly as authorities conducted a standard search and discovered 2 white pills hidden inside his side pants pocket, substances that were subsequently identified by forensic specialists as hydrocodone, a highly potent narcotic pain reliever frequently prescribed for severe chronic physical trauma. This specific discovery cast a harsh, unforgiving light on the immense physical toll that decades of elite athletic competition and numerous complex surgical procedures had taken on the legendary golfer's body. Woods was swiftly taken into custody and transported to the Martin County Jail, where he underwent the standard processing procedures that apply to any citizen, a jarring contrast to the red carpets and roaring crowds he was accustomed to navigating. He was ultimately released in the very early hours of March 28th, leaving the facility amidst a brewing storm of paparazzi cameras and aggressive journalistic scrutiny that would only intensify over the coming days. Within a matter of days, legal representatives for the golfer formally entered a plea of not guilty to misdemeanor charges of driving under the influence with property damage, alongside the charge for refusing the chemical test, setting the stage for a prolonged and highly publicized legal battle with a critical court date scheduled for July 7th, in the immediate wake of this deeply unsettling public crisis. The decision was made for Woods to step completely away from the public eye and seek highly specialized professional assistance at an elite secluded rehabilitation center nestled in the mountains of Switzerland. This marked the beginning of a rigorous, deeply private, 3-month treatment program specifically designed to address the complex intersection of severe chronic pain management, dependency on prescription medication, and the overwhelming psychological stress associated with his ongoing legal challenges. For nearly 90 days, the sporting world was left in a state of quiet suspension, wondering whether one of the greatest athletes in human history would ever be able to recover his health, let alone make a triumphant return to the sport he had revolutionized. The isolation of the Swiss clinic provided a much-needed sanctuary from the relentless glare of the American media, allowing the 50-year-old athlete to focus entirely on the grueling, day-to-day work of physical and emotional restoration. Sources close to the golfer revealed that the original plan was an unyielding commitment to a full 3-month program, a timeline that remained firmly on target despite the immense internal and external pressures mounting against him, as the weeks ticked by in the sterile, disciplined environment of the European facility. The sheer magnitude of the challenge became increasingly apparent to those within his inner circle, who noted that the athlete was doing the absolute best he could under conditions of extraordinary emotional and physical duress. The pressure to heal was not merely a matter of personal pride. It was an urgent necessity compounded by the looming legal proceedings in Florida and the knowledge that his entire legacy hung in a very precarious balance. Managing chronic pain without relying on the very medications that had contributed to his legal undoing proved to be an incredibly steep hill to climb, requiring a complete overhaul of his daily fitness, physical therapy, and wellness routines. Every single day in rehab was a battle against the long-term damage inflicted by a career of violent golf swings, multiple back surgeries, and past vehicular accidents that had left his physical frame permanently compromised. The determination to return to professional golf remained a powerful motivating factor, yet insiders openly acknowledged that establishing a sustainable, healthy pain management routine was an exceptionally tough objective that would require a level of discipline unmatched even by his legendary practice sessions on the golf course. Throughout this incredibly dark and challenging period of isolation in Switzerland, Woods was not entirely alone in his struggle as he remained in constant, deeply emotional communication with his girlfriend, Vanessa Trump. Vanessa had been facing her own monumental and deeply personal battle back in the United States, having publicly announced her difficult diagnosis and battle with breast cancer in May, just as Woods was beginning his intensive rehabilitation program. This parallel crisis added a profound layer of emotional complexity to their relationship, transforming their daily long-distance conversations into a vital lifeline of mutual support, resilience, and shared vulnerability. Despite the immense distance and their respective health crises, the couple managed to share their lives deeply and consistently, maintaining the strong bond they had forged since they first began dating in early 25. The image of Tiger Woods that emerged from this period was not that of a distant, untouchable sports superstar, but rather that of a deeply caring, supportive family man who was desperately trying to be present for the woman he loved. Even while fighting his own demons in a foreign land, the gravity of Vanessa Trump's health situation eventually led to a highly pivotal and revealing moment in Woods' rehabilitation journey when the golfer chose to take a brief, tightly controlled break from his intensive treatment program in Switzerland to fly back to the United States. This brief hiatus was driven by a powerful desire to physically stand by Vanessa's side during some of her most difficult medical treatments and to provide a comforting, stable presence for her daughter, Kai Trump. Over the course of his relationship with Vanessa, Woods had grown exceptionally close to Kai, stepping into a protective paternal role that became even more critical as the family navigated the terrifying realities of a major cancer diagnosis. This temporary departure from the Swiss clinic underscored the profound shift in the golfer's priorities, illustrating that his commitments as a family figure had come to transcend the rigid boundaries of his medical isolation. After providing the necessary emotional support to his loved ones during that critical window, Woods quietly returned to Switzerland to fulfill the remainder of his long-term treatment plan, demonstrating a dual commitment to his family's well-being and his own personal recovery. Now, the grueling European chapter of this dramatic saga has officially drawn to a close, as Page 6 has formally confirmed that Tiger Woods has officially checked out of the Swiss Rehabilitation Center. The pro golfer utilized his private aircraft to make the long journey back to the United States on a Friday, marking the end of a nearly 3-month period of intensive therapy and seclusion that began shortly after his headline-making arrest. Almost immediately upon entering American airspace, the intense media apparatus re-engaged, as photojournalists successfully captured images of the legendary athlete immediately after his arrival at a private airport located in Jupiter, Florida. Clad in casual attire and displaying a stoic, focused expression, Woods disembarked from his private jet and smoothly navigated the mandatory customs procedures before finally transitioning back to the familiar, secure confines of his personal residence. This highly anticipated return to Florida soil marks the official conclusion of his formal rehab stint, but it simultaneously signals the beginning of an entirely new, potentially far more volatile chapter of his journey. As the reality of his impending July 7th court date looms large on the horizon, the return of Tiger Woods to his home in Jupiter, Florida, represents far more than the simple conclusion of a transatlantic flight. It marks the physical re-entry of a flawed legend into the very environment where his deepest personal and legal crises unfolded. As the wheels of his private jet touched down on the tarmac, the immediate chapter of secluded medical isolation in Switzerland officially dissolved, replaced by the heavy, unavoidable reality of an upcoming judicial reckoning. The looming July 7th court date stands as a critical threshold, will dictate the legal trajectory of his immediate future, forcing the 50-year-old athlete to publicly answer for the events of that turbulent March morning. Facing misdemeanor charges of driving under the influence with property damage alongside a refusal to submit to a lawful chemical test carries a weight that cannot be bypassed by athletic status or global fame. The legal system operates on an objective framework of evidence, documentation, and statutes. And the absence of a urinalysis test paired with the discovery of hydrocodone pills in his possession will form the core of a highly complex legal presentation. His legal team faces the monumental task of navigating these charges in a manner that protects his freedom while attempting to preserve whatever remaining shreds of public goodwill exist after such a highly publicized, structurally damaging vehicular incident. Beyond the immediate confines of the courtroom, the true battle for Tiger Woods lies in the daily, unyielding management of a physical body that has been pushed far past its natural breaking points over decades of unprecedented athletic competition. To truly understand the narrative of his pain, one must examine the long history of severe vehicular accidents and physical traumas that have systematically compromised his musculoskeletal framework over the years. The catastrophic rollover crash on Jupiter Island was not an isolated event, but rather the latest and most destructive entry in a sequence of physical crises that have plagued his later career, each one leaving behind a compounding legacy of scar tissue, nerve damage, and structural instability. For a golfer whose legendary swing was built on explosive, violent rotational force, the accumulation of multiple spinal surgeries, knee reconstructions, and high-impact vehicular traumas has turned the simple act of walking into a triumph of sheer willpower. The journey through the Swiss rehabilitation facility was fundamentally designed to break the cycle of chemical dependency on narcotic pain relievers like hydrocodone, but exiting the facility means he must now find a way to endure this chronic, agonizing physical reality using sustainable, non-destructive therapeutic methodologies. The ambition to return to competitive, professional golf remains an central, almost mythical driving force in his psyche, an internal flame that refuses to be extinguished by the harsh limitations of age and physical degradation. Insiders have repeatedly emphasized that despite the immense stress, the legal peril, and the sheer exhaustion of the recovery process, Woods remains utterly determined to step back onto the pristine fairways and hear the roar of the crowds once again. However, the path to achieving that athletic resurrection is exceptionally steep and fraught with immense practical difficulties, as it requires him to maintain a highly rigorous, carefully calibrated fitness and physical therapy routine while completely avoiding the pharmaceutical crutches that previously derailed his life. A successful return to golf cannot occur in a vacuum. It demands a perfect alignment of spinal stability, pain mitigation, and mental clarity that allows him to execute complex athletic movements under intense psychological pressure. The world of golf has evolved dramatically, populated by younger, pristine athletes who do not carry the immense physical and emotional baggage that Woods logs every single day, making his quest for a final, triumphant chapter one of the most difficult undertakings in the history of modern sports as he navigates this deeply uncertain professional and legal terrain. The emotional sanctuary provided by his relationship with Vanessa Trump remains a critical anchor, a source of mutual strength that has been forged in the fires of concurrent personal crises. The profound bond between them is uniquely defined by a shared experience of profound vulnerability, as Vanessa continues her own courageous, highly demanding battle against breast cancer, a diagnosis that shook their collective world just as Woods was entering his Swiss rehabilitation program. This shared journey through darkness has stripped away the superficial layers of celebrity, revealing a deeply resilient, mutually supportive partnership where two individuals with immensely full, Stressful plates find solace and understanding in one another's presence. Wood's decision to briefly interrupt his medical treatment in Europe to stand by her side during her most critical health struggles demonstrated a profound reordering of his life's priorities, proving that the roles of a caring partner and a supportive family figure have taken precedence over the singular, obsessive pursuit of individual athletic glory. His deep, growing closeness with Vanessa's daughter Kai Trump has further solidified this familial foundation, providing him with a sense of protective purpose and domestic grounding that stands in stark contrast to the chaotic, isolated life of an embattled sports icon. The unfolding narrative of Tiger Woods is no longer just a story about golf championships or historical statistics. It is transformed into a profound, universal human drama about the cost of greatness, the reality of human fallibility, and the arduous nonlinear process of personal redemption. The global audience watching this saga play out is forced to confront the complex reality that our heroes are inherently fragile, capable of making catastrophic mistakes, and subject to the same physical and psychological laws that govern all of humanity. The coming months will test every single aspect of his character, demanding a level of emotional maturity, legal accountability, and physical discipline that far exceeds anything required to win a major championship under the blistering Sunday sun. Whether he ever hoists another trophy or walks the fairways of a major tournament again is ultimately secondary to the much larger, far more significant task of putting his life back together, securing his health, and protecting the family structure that has sustained him through his darkest hours. As the July 7th court date approaches and the quiet daily routines of recovery continue behind closed doors in Florida, the world can only watch and hope that this legendary figure finds the peace, balance, and resilience necessary